It's nice to welcome you all. So really the purpose of this presentation is to discuss a bit about KSG, a bit about myself, a bit about the science GCSEs that students are currently having, some of the changes that have been made over the years and how they actually impact students. And then we'll be talking a bit about our philosophy here at KSG, how we deliver education, how we make sure that it really works for students. So to start off with, my name is Mohammad. I'd like to welcome you all. My tutoring journey actually started back when I was doing my A-levels myself, where I saw that many students were struggling in their A-levels. The teacher was explaining concepts in a way that they couldn't understand it. And I really have a strong passion for ensuring that students understand the underlying concepts in science. And I thought maybe I could do something about it. And I started teaching some of the students in my class. And I saw that the way I could break concepts down was something that students weren't really accustomed to in the classroom, and it really allowed them to understand the concepts in a new way. And from there, my passion was really born to extend this kind of ability to understand concepts to the wider community. And almost 3,000 hours later, I'm here at KSG and I'm trying to help the KSG community to improve their performance as well. So I achieved all A stars across maths and science GCSEs. I achieved 3 A stars in my A-levels as well. And I've managed to develop lots of exclusive techniques for how students can improve their performance. After kind of seeing how students sometimes misunderstand concepts, is there any kind of frameworks and exam techniques that can really help students do better? And so yeah, here we have a student who before they didn't have the confidence to get a 9, but really when you break things down and you explain concepts thoroughly, I can show that it's not as hard as it seems. So just quickly, I'd like to discuss some of the GCSEs and how they work. So to start off with, there was a change from kind of an A star to G scale to the 9-to-1 scale. And some of the purposes for that is that A stars, there were kind of a wide variety of students within even the A star bracket. There were some who were doing really well, some who were not doing as well. And so they decided to more or less split the A star into an 8 and a 9, and so now we have a 9-to-1 scale. As part of this, what they actually did was they brought a lot of the A-level content from science back into the GCSEs. And so a lot of our children now are studying some A-level content. And there's actually more of it. So the sciences have definitely gone a lot harder. They've also decided to increase the amount of quantitative skills that are required. So maths is especially important. And the questions are completely of a different style. Before, you could memorize your way through the specification and get a good grade. Now that's practically impossible because the questions that come on year after year are just completely different from that of the previous year. And so what you need to do is you need to have that problem-solving skill set that you need to approach any question. So there's really 3 types that you can get in terms of the GCSEs. There's the triple award, which is you specialize in each of the sciences individually. You could get the double award, which is you do all 3 sciences still, but to a lesser extent. And then you have the single award, which is where you kind of do the basics of each of the 3 sciences. Now at KSG, we actually encourage students to push towards doing the triple award because the extra effort that is required to cover that content isn't as substantial, and we've developed the framework to help students achieve that. Now, just if you can see on the left here, we have the higher tier and the foundation tier. So the way it works is that if a student sits the higher tier, then they can get up to a 9. And if they sit the foundation tier, the maximum grade they can get is a 5. And actually about 30% of the marks here in the middle are the same across both of the specifications. And so that kind of allows teachers to benchmark where the student is going to be. They might give them level 4, level 5 questions. And if the students are doing quite well in them, then they may encourage them to do the higher spec so they can get a higher mark potentially. So just a bit about the specifications. There are 3 main exam boards, AQA, EdXL, and OCR. I can say with relatively high confidence that your child will be studying one of these. More than 90% of schools across the UK use one of these specifications. And where AQA is the most common for sure. And really why this is important is because each of the specifications has slightly different content. There's slightly more things that need to be covered in each of the specifications. Some of them have a little bit less in some areas. And so it's important when you're going out to seek tuition to make sure that the tutor actually understands the specification and the content that needs to be addressed, as well as teaching to the specification. It wouldn't be much help if an OCR, a student doing OCR, is being taught Edexcel content. They'll be learning a lot of things that they don't need to know, and most importantly, they'll be missing a lot of information. So that's something obviously we prioritize at KSG, and we make sure that every student's individual needs when it comes to exams is being addressed. And so if you can see here on the AQA, the way that the exam works for the combined test is you're going to have 2 papers for biology, 2 papers for chemistry, 2 papers for physics, each of which are worth around a sixth of the total test. And if you see here, you've got about half of the content being addressed in the first paper and the rest of the half being addressed in the other paper. And this is going to be the same whether it's foundation or higher, it's just the difficulty of the test is going to be quite different. So this is the specifications for Edexcel OCR as well. So just to talk a bit about the content, the way that we deliver tests. So the way we approach learning is we have a laser focus on the exam, and we take a hybrid approach, taking into account both the individual needs of the student and the general content that all of the students will need to know. And so the way that we deliver learning is we start with 90 minutes of interactive learning lessons. We'll be recapping the previous concepts, making sure that students have a fundamental grasp of them. And then moving on to the main content that is extremely focused on the concepts that is specific to their spec. I know a lot of tuition agencies, the way they do things is they just get a textbook and a general textbook. Sometimes it's not even endorsed by a specification, so they're not learning very useful information. And it's definitely not endorsed by the exam boards. So we make sure that we are addressing these important components. And after teaching the content, we have we quite highly prioritize exam-style questions at the end to make sure that students actually understand how that concept can be addressed in the exam and how to confidently tackle it. And hopefully we'll be going through an example just so you can see. After that, we take 30 minutes to teach to the individual student needs. So that includes all of the things that we mentioned earlier. Some of the students may be doing higher, some are doing foundation, some are doing different specs and examples. They're going to have different concerns, different doubts, have a different understanding of different concepts. And so it's important, this part is really important for us to make sure that every student is confident as they walk out of the classroom. And then at the end, what we do is we give regular tests, regular homework, and the idea is that we really want to take an objective standpoint when it comes to making sure that a student understands it and not just say, check it off check off the box and say, okay, the student has understood the concept. No, we're going to give them tests, we're going to give them homework, you're going to see their improvement over time. And so you don't really need to take our word for it. And this is kind of all part of our exclusive technique, which is proof of delivery. So this is something that's really revolutionary, is we don't just expect that the student will come in and you're just going to hope that they do better, but you actually get the proof for it. And as part of this, we've developed a vertical plan where, as you can see here, we have the theme of the topic, motion. This is physics as an example. Forces in motion, conservation of energy. So these are the subtopics in the specification. And within that, we've broken it down to the individual concepts that students need to understand. And these concepts are what we focus on when we deliver homework and teaching, so that we can make sure that students have addressed them. So just a bit about my teaching philosophy is I have I place a strong importance on ensuring that students are grounding their understanding of science within a real-life framework. Essentially being able to apply the sciences to the world around them. The beauty of taking this approach is students can actually use the world around them as a mark scheme, so to speak, in the exam. And it allows them to develop that general skill set where that same concept can be applied to numerous different questions, as is very important in these specifications. So here we've got an example where they're saying Nina and Matt are ice skating, and as you can see in the first example, Nina and Matt are holding hands, and then what they're doing is they're pushing away from each other. And the question is actually asking why Nina and Matt are moving apart at different speeds. So Nina is lighter than Matt, and Nina is moving away from Matt at a faster speed than Matt is. And so in this example, we already have an understanding of what would happen. If there was a heavy object and a light object pushing away from each other, we have an understanding that the lighter object is going to move away faster. And so by linking our intuitions about the world around us with the science concepts, that really brings the whole of science to life, and it allows you to enjoy it more, to engage with the material, to understand it a lot better. And importantly, when it comes to exam time and they're asking all sorts of scenario questions, the student will remember. They can rely on that intuition to guide them to the right answer. Also something else that we place high prioritization on is ensuring that students are provided with systematic steps that have been tailor-made by us at KSG that have been really developed over the years of tuition that we have delivered. So here is an example where a student might be asked to draw a dot and cross diagram of ammonia. So this is a kind of similar, this is a common topic that's being asked about in chemistry. And so what we do is we really break it down into a framework. The first thing the students should need to be doing is looking at the electrons of each of the atom in the outer shell. And so here we can see that for group 1 they need 1 electron, and group 5 needs 3 electrons, because you need to have a full outer shell, where full outer shell is either 2 or 8 electrons. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 5 plus 3 is 8. And then the student needs to draw the atom that requires the most amount of electrons in the middle and the other overlapping with that electron. So we can see in the previous example with nitrogen, there are 3 electrons needed, and so that's the one that needs the most electrons. So we put that in the middle. And then what we do is the student draws the pairs of electrons equivalent to the number of electrons required by the atom. So in this case, in the previous example, we saw that hydrogen needs one electron and nitrogen needs 3. So we're going to draw in 3 overlapping pairs of electrons. So now each of the hydrogens gets 1 pair and the nitrogen gets 3 pairs. And finally, the student can look at the periodic table again to draw in the remaining electrons. So hydrogen only has 1 electron in its outer shell, and so this 1x is enough. It's got all the electrons it needs. And if we say the dot is for the hydrogen. And for the nitrogen, we've got 3 x's if we were to look at this example. And so because it's in group 5, it has to have a total of 5 electrons in the outer shell. And so if it only has 3 at the moment, we need to draw in 2 more x's. And then finally, something that we place a lot of prioritization on is the check at the end, making sure that the answer is actually correct. And here we have 2 checks that we employ, which is where the student can look at the outer shell and make sure that it is actually full. So in our case, if we count here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 electrons in total for nitrogen and 2 electrons in total for each of the hydrogens. So it has a full outer shell and it has the correct number of electrons. Now students are taught the fundamentals for this concept, so they know how to work with it, but they're not really taught a systematic framework, a process, a methodology for actually approaching these questions. And most importantly is a lot of things that haven't been emphasized enough is that students will often make a silly mistake somewhere along the process. And unfortunately, the way many tackle this problem is they just say, don't make silly mistakes. Of course, that's quite a ridiculous thing to do, because the student doesn't aim to make silly mistakes. It's just that they accidentally do something in the process and it doesn't work. And so the way we approach that is we build in systems to ensure that that doesn't happen. So for example here, if the student checks at the end and realizes that the nitrogen doesn't have a full outer shell, or that the hydrogen doesn't have a full outer shell, that gives them the opportunity, that alerts them to the problem, allows them to go back and see what went wrong in the process. And so that's a really powerful technique that we found to be very effective for helping students achieve top marks. And finally, what I'd like to discuss is why tuition. And in order to discuss this, I'd really like to bring an anecdote, because there's a lot of evidence to show how powerful private tuition can be for improving results. But here I'd like to give an example of a student that I was teaching. His name is Ali, and Ali was underperforming in maths. He was doing his A-levels, and he was consistently achieving C's, and Ali was really trying, but he couldn't really get there. And what happened is we started tuition, and over the process, throughout the 2 years that I was teaching Ali, he managed to achieve an A-star in maths and actually landed a position doing economics at LSE. LSE is one of the most prestigious universities in the country, and in fact in the world, equivalent to UCL and Imperial and even Oxbridge. And really, when I was thinking about this revolutionary shift that Ali actually had in his career, he could have underperforming in maths at SC, he wouldn't have even been able to get into a Russell Group university, let alone LSE. And he's completely shifted his career trajectory. And there's a lot of studies that have shown that going to a Russell Group university, on average, means a graduate will earn 13.5 thousand more than someone who doesn't go to a Russell Group university. And over the entire career, over the entire lifetime, that accumulates to over £500,000 in increased income for that individual. And so really what I see over the years of tuition, one of the big differences in the way that those who are more successful approach tuition and those who are maybe a bit less successful, is that the successful think of tuition as an investment rather than as an expense. By investing a bit in your child's learning at the moment, they'll be able to do achieve amazing results in their GCSEs, and as a result of that, they'll be able to do better A-levels that are of higher demand by universities and do better in those as well. And then after that, they'll be able to achieve top positions at prestigious universities, which will allow them to pick whatever career really that they want. And we see that the biggest problem for these students tends to be that they're worrying about what options they want to do. They're thinking about what should they do in the future because they have those options available to them. And so really just to summarize, is really tuition is an investment that people don't often consider too much. People are often quite short-term in the way they think, what should we have for dinner today? What should I do over the weekend? And they're not really taking that long-term approach. How is my child going to do in his GCSEs, especially now throughout the pandemic? How is my child going to approach his future and ensure that I can secure success for them? And really, when you think about it in that long-term lens, tuition becomes a very obvious option. And one big recommendation that I'll make on this front is try to, when you're exploring your tuition options, prioritize quality. Quality is very important. Make sure that you go with a center that knows what they're doing, that understands the spec, understands the curriculum, and has a structured approach to teaching it, rather than looking for a price. Because really, if I can level with you, your child's future is incredibly important, and not something that we should be kind of taking these cost considerations and haggling about, should I go with this center, should I go with this center? Pick the one that gives you the best quality and actually allows you to secure your child's future.